The Republican Party has finally completed their takeover of the court system. And that's not just speculation. That's exactly what the chairwoman of the Republican Party recently announced in an op-ed. I have Farron Cousins from the Trial Lawyer magazine with me now to explain what's happening. You know what's so amazing? This is a story we've been telling for years, and our position was, why are the Democrats so interested in a local legislator when anything that the legislator writes, anything that favorable senator writes, anything that Democrat legislator or senator writes, or Democratic president creates, can be taken away by the court system? And they never got it. And so now all of a sudden this Obama cat comes out and says, yeah, we really blew it this time. You think? What's your take on this?
Had, the same day that Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman of the RNC, came out with her op-ed congratulating Trump on the 93 federal judges that he has appointed, 37 circuit court judges, 54 district judges. The same day that came out, you had Christopher Kang, who was one of the lead attorneys on judicial nominations for Obama. He came out with his op-ed that said, listen, be mad at Republicans for taking over the courts, but I'm going to be honest, we, the Obama Democrats, deserve a lot of the blame because we let it happen.
Okay.
We didn't fight. We tried to play the middle, and look what happened. We lost.
I like this story that was done by The Hill is very insightful. You know, they did a nice job understanding this story. And what they focused on, what I think is remarkable about this, is they kind of got it even when the Democrat advisor to Obama on the court system, the guy who really blew it. Now, they're going to say, oh, no, he didn't have a chance. No, he had a chance. He had 2 years worth of a chance to fill 57 slots, and he didn't do it. Okay? Why? Because he was reaching across the aisle. We're going to get along just fine. I'm Obama. I'm the consensus builder. Well, so the next thing about this story that's so interesting is it kind of points out that Democrats, when they make an appointment, it's all about social issues. Abortion issues, gender issues, but they miss consumer issues. They miss the fact that corporations are killing this country, and the people they appoint as judges all come from that corporate background.
And you're going to be hard-pressed to find any consumer-friendly judge in this country that is not also great on social issues.
Right.
But instead, what they did, and Kang admits this in the op-ed, was basically say, all right, Republicans, here's our person, yes or no? No? Okay, well, we'll go find somebody more to the right. But they find people to the right who are good on a couple social issues, so they sell to Democrats.
Yeah.
But they're also judges who are going to say, listen, I'm going to side with an oil company every time. I'm going to side with a chemical giant, with Wall Street banks. But I might go the left on abortion, maybe. And that's what they went for because they thought Republicans would be okay with it. And Republicans still said, nope, give us somebody worse.
Let me just tell you something. When the Ninth Circuit, California Ninth Circuit, has an unprecedented 13 Republican-appointed judges, buddy, you're in trouble. That at one point was the most liberal circuit in the country, not anymore. It's with a heavy heart that we witness media being flooded by tragedies relating to gun violence, with mass shootings seeming to go on like a grim clockwork. Americans today are left questioning just what protections are we afforded to gun owners under the Second Amendment. But exactly what constitutional rights did our founding fathers intend? Joining me to talk about this is Thom Hartmann, radio host and author of the book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. Thom, I want you just to spend more time talking about this. It's going to be less question and answer because I want the viewers to hear what you're presenting in this book because they're new ideas. From your perspective, what's the fundamental purpose, for example, of the Americans' right to bear arms? What's your take on that?
Madison had just finished the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. They had the first draft of the Constitution, or the final draft, I guess you'd call it, of the Constitution. He sent a copy of it to Jefferson in France. Jefferson was his mentor. He said, gee, Thomas, what do you think about this? And Jefferson went and sent him this long letter, which you can still read, which is pretty astonishing, this letter. And he said, I like the fact that you've got separation of power. I like the three branches of government. He went through the things that he liked about it, and he said, now I will tell you what I do not like. And he said, I do not like that there is no explicit habeas corpus provision. I do not like that there is no explicit provision to eliminate monopolies in commerce, and I do not like that there is no explicit provision banning standing armies during times of peace. And this was the concern that so many of the founders had, because they were all students of European history, and they all knew that country after country after country, going back to Rome and Greece and everything else, but in particular, hundreds of European countries over the previous 1,000 years had been taken down by their own armies. They'd raise a giant army, they'd march off to war, they'd have a glorious war, and then after the war, they didn't disband the army, and the army would end up taking over the country. And so Jefferson was so emphatic about that Madison's response was, okay, we will do two things. Number one, we will build it into the Constitution that every 2 years, the entire Congress of the United States has to decide whether we're going to continue to have an army if we're during times of peace.
Tom, how do our gun ownership laws compare to those of other countries? I mean, I think we lose sight of that sometimes, that we're pretty different where it comes to gun ownership. What's your observation of that as you wrote this book?
We are different from many other countries in that we have a fairly laissez-faire attitude toward guns. We just let the gun manufacturers do what they want, and own as many politicians as they want. And the result of that is all the deaths that we see, 40,000 gun deaths last year. There's an absolute and direct correlation between the number of guns in circulation and the number of gun homicides and suicides that we see. And for example, in Australia, after the Port Arthur massacre in 1996, when they said, okay, enough, we're going to make it, we're going to regulate guns, sort of like the way we do cars. You've got to have a driver's a license. And, they made it a little harder to own a gun. It's still not impossible or even difficult, but harder. And as a result of that, not only did homicides go down, not just in the first year, but over a long period of time in Australia, but suicides went down as well, because guns weren't as available.
Tom, you hear this argument that our vast media coverage of mass shootings is the product of sensationalized news. It's a news cycle problem, and that our gun laws truly are to blame for this this constant barrage of killings. You hear both sides of that argument. Actually, there's several sides to that, not two sides. But you hear the argument that this is just all sensationalized. You finished writing this book. I'm sure you have done all the research that you typically do when you write a book. What do you come away thinking about on that particular issue of this is just all sensationalized? What's your take?
It's nonsense. I mean, this is a real issue. The United States is the only developed country in the world that has regular gun massacres. Typically on mass murderers or mass murders done with guns, typically 3 or 4 a week now. And, occasionally that'll pop up in some other country. We saw it recently in New Zealand. We saw it in Norway back 4 or 5 years ago. One incident. And it shocked not just the country, but the continent. So, no, this is not an invention of our media at all. This is a very, very real problem. And it's more or less uniquely American.
I'm wondering what role you're seeing youth. I mean, it's kind of encouraging. You're seeing youth rise up and say, we want to shape gun legislation. Are we making any headway there to where we're coming to more intelligent kind of gun legislation, to where maybe we can even get back to the point to where we can sue gun manufacturers when they do lawless types of things that we often see gun manufacturers do? What have you observed?
Well, being able to sue gun manufacturers would be a marvelous thing. Pap, I know that you know this story really well because you were in the middle of it. You were one of the real heroes and good guys in this. Back in the late 90s, the most powerful lobby in Congress was the tobacco lobby. Nobody defied them. Mike Pence was writing op-eds about how tobacco doesn't cause cancer. I mean, it was just like the tobacco lobby just owned the country. And then, as a consequence of a series of lawsuits like you were involved in and investigations being done by Congress, it came out. And the American people realized that the tobacco lobby, the tobacco industry, had been lying to us for years, that for decades they'd known that their product was killing literally 500,000 Americans a year, and they were covering it up and profiting off it, and they lost that political power. I think that moment in the late 90s when the tobacco lobby went from being the most powerful in Congress or in D.C. to being one of the least powerful, is about to be replicated with regard to the gun lobby. The gun lobby and the NRA, in my opinion, have been so exposed. And in large part, hats off to the Parkland kids, but have been so exposed as essentially shills and criminals that I don't think this is going to last much longer.
Tom, I've read most of the things you write. I know this book has got to be as good as all the other great books that you've written. And thank you for joining me, and thank you for paying attention to this topic. Americans want to know more about the path that gun rights are taking in the United States. So thank you for paying attention to it. Every year, 1 million hernia surgeries are performed in the United States. Unfortunately, some mesh implants that are used in these surgeries have caused complications, including infection and organ damage that led to surgeries to correct those problems. If this has happened to you, learn more about the hernia mesh lawsuit by going online to hernia.law or call us for a free consultation about your legal rights.